Susie, it seems like the conclusion of Women's History Month is the perfect time to have a conversation with a accomplished woman executive, as former president of Children's Memorial Hermann Hospital and also now as an executive coach. Let me start by asking you in general, because I know that we're all unique, but in general, how would you describe today's executive woman and the contribution she's making in the workplace?
Hi, Kelly. Good to spend time with you. When I think about the unique contributions of women executives, two things come to mind. First, empathy, and then also creativity. In recent years, it's becoming more important as companies really need to embody more than a financial target, more than a customer net promoter score. It needs to be good for those who work inside the organization, and that's where empathy kicks in.
You know, that's so interesting because I've done a lot of talking in the last year about cultivating and communicating company culture. And you're right, it feels like company culture is a very tangible asset that an organization offers, especially in retaining good talent.
Right. What's the old saying? Culture eats strategy for lunch. And I think that used to be a saying and people would kind of nod and chuckle. And now they're seeing that it affects the bottom line. It affects how innovative the organization is. It affects who's attracted to the organization.
Right. And what about creativity?
Creativity. That's the fun one. I think that in general, women leaders are able to tap into that and put two disparate concepts together and create something new. And they tend to get there faster. I'm not sure why. I have theories, but I have no research behind it.
Well, we've talked a little bit about the unique contribution that you see women executives making. So let's get into a little bit more about the coaching. And what are some of the challenges that as an executive coach you see women facing? And what advice is that required of you in counseling some of these folks?
When I think of one of the ubiquitous challenges of female executives, the word no comes up. And I'll spend a little time talking about two aspects of no. Firstly, women are more likely to say yes to any job, task, initiative, boring task force that's asked of them. Almost inherently, almost reflexively, yes. And on further examination, the answer should or might have been better aimed at no or not now, in order to keep themselves on a track that is more productive, more recognized as a senior leader, and frankly, just less of the stuff that needs to be done. There's a way to say no that's politically correct. And I often ask my coachees to watch somebody else in the organization that seems to manage to pivot and dance around the junk jobs. Well, they're standing there picking them up. And at the end of the year, they're overwhelmed and they haven't produced in the same way that perhaps a colleague has, but they're very busy.
You know, this is a great lead in to research that the Harvard Business Review published not too long ago, where women executives are actually perceived as being great leaders. And in measurable competencies, actually have measured higher or ranked higher, like in 84% of those competencies than men. So the roadblock, so to speak, is not really that anyone perceives women executives anymore as less competent or less capable, but that the big roadblock is as they described it, a dearth of opportunities.
I'm not sure if leaders, particularly female, are spending enough time building alliances across their internal network and sometimes even external, so that when there's something big on the line, their name pops up because they've created a relationship prior to any discussion. And so they've kind of seeded, the environment, if you will. If that's not being done, it's really hard for you to be top of mind. and the other thing that's interesting about women is they overvalue hard work, like keeping their nose to the grindstone. And this is documented. And when you do that, you have less time for broader perspective, less time to build alliances, get to know colleagues, get to know who's, driving what initiative, kind of building your coalition, if you will. So I do think, not taking time to build the relationships that are deep enough so that you're top of mind is one barrier. Now, I have coaches that they could build the relationships all they want, and their culture is not going to support their goals, their initiatives, their innovations. Many times, large organizations in general aren't built for innovation. They're built for homeostasis, consistent incremental improvement. And so I encourage my coaches that are really on an innovation track to start building their network, their people, their coalition outside of the organization, so that they have a place to commiserate and, and just collaborate with. And then it's oftentimes a jumping off point for them.
I agree. I think that's great advice. So if you were to leave one piece of advice at the conclusion of this year's Women in History Month, what would be your mantra to executive women?
I would think about grow me, but don't own me.
Interesting. So independence, but I'm still anxious to learn.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. Well, and I feel like we've learned a lot in this brief conversation with you. So thanks, Susie, so much for your time. And we'll certainly look forward to seeing the great advice generated in all of the clients that you're working with.
Great. Nice to be with you, Kelly.